The White Mountain National Forest. 1,225 square miles of wilderness, waterfalls, epic hikes, and one of the best places to view the fall foliage in the United States. In this video, I'll outline a 3-day itinerary, including when to visit for peak color, how to get there and how to get around, where to stay, what to see, and options for accommodations. This video is designed to cover multiple price points, levels of hiking expertise, and a wide array of things to do and accommodation types that should fit anyone's personal taste or travel style. This is Brew England, a channel dedicated to all things New England culture, adventures, and beer. Timing peak foliage can be tricky since it will be different every year. Statistically speaking, your best bet might be the second week of October, but there's no guarantee. You'll want to look at projected forecasts like the one provided by Visit New Hampshire and plan accordingly. If you're the type who likes to book 6 months in advance for everything, you might want to hold off. I feel your pain. However, some of the popular accommodations and attractions book up fast, so you might not want to wait until the last minute either. It's a balance. If you're a little early, it's still going to be beautiful. If you're unlucky, a big windstorm could come along and cut autumn foliage seasons short. Also, consider visiting during the week. Despite the wilderness nature of the White Mountains, there are sections known for bad traffic caused by tourists stopping in the middle of the road for photos and lining up for crowded viewpoints, backing up traffic for miles on some weekends. If you're hoping to do the top hikes and attractions, you can avoid the worst of the crowds by visiting during the week, or just by getting up earlier. Just note that not all attractions are open 7 days a week, so keep that in mind. If you want to experience magnificent foliage without the crowds, consider visiting the Northeast Kingdom in Vermont, the Great North Woods north of the White Mountains, and the Kancamagus Valley in Maine. However, there's not going to be as many amenities or attractions in these more secluded areas. Weather can be all over the place in the New England fall. I would prepare for 40s, 50s, or 60s, so break out your sweatshirts and flannel. It could rain, or even snow if you're unlucky, so bring a rain jacket at the very least. If you're planning to do any serious hiking, you'll want a good pair of hiking boots or trail runners and moisture-wicking clothing. If you're planning on hiking above treeline, you'll want to bring a winter coat, gloves, and a warm hat. It might be 60s and sunny at the trailhead, but could easily be in the 20s with 45-mile-per-hour winds with icy snow on the higher peaks. Always check the high summit mountain forecast beforehand. Every year, people die being unprepared for the elements and conditions, so be informed and stay safe. Of course, that's not a worry if you're planning to stay below tree line. Also, you likely won't have great cell phone receptions in many parts of the White Mountains. Make sure you download your maps and Spotify playlists beforehand. The most popular option to get to the White Mountains is going to be flying into Boston and renting a car. One of the things they don't tell you about Boston is within 2 hours you can go from crowded city to lush wilderness just by driving up the I-95 into the White Mountains of New Hampshire. Other options do include flying into Manchester or Portland, Maine, but these are much smaller airports with more limited options. You can also fly into Burlington, Vermont if you're planning a longer road trip across northern New England. If you don't drive, you're going to be limited. You could take a Concord coach line to a number of points in the White Mountains, including Conway, Lincoln, Littleton, or Gorham, but you'll be limited to hikes/attractions in the immediate area without further planning. If you have a car, getting around will be super easy. You can better time your adventures to avoid crowds and access a greater variety of attractions and hikes. I would make sure to carry cash at times. Some of the trailheads do require payment and cash is preferred, though there is an option to pay online once you have cell phone service. However, it is good to note that Appalachian Mountain Club does offer shuttles to popular trailheads and also stop in Gorham and Lincoln. Shuttles cost $24 and reservations are highly recommended. With some planning, you could take a Concord bus up from Boston and then get around via AMC shuttle. Alternatively, you can always book a private tour. Day tours out of Boston start at $145 and can go up to $300 per person. I found a 2-day tour out of Boston with stops in both White Mountains and Lake Winnipesaukee with golden bus tours, but couldn't find a price. You also have the Meredith Scenic Railroad, which goes from Meredith in the Lakes region of New Hampshire all the way up to Lincoln. At any rate, as the title of the video suggests, I will assume you have a car and are going on a road trip. I'm going to break the White Mountain National Forest into 4 regions: Lincoln, Woodstock, and Franconia Notch, Littleton and Crawford Notch, Gorham and Pinkham Notch, and North Conway and the Kancamagus Highway. Each of these are small idyllic towns with a good selection of restaurants, bars, and shops. If you're the type of person who wants to walk to a local coffee shop in the morning or walk to a bar after a day of adventuring, you'll probably want to stay in town. In these towns, you'll find cozy inns as well as big-name hotel chains, as well as some resorts. In between towns, in the more rural areas, you'll find plenty of campsites, cozy mountain inns, as well as cabins to rent if you want something more quiet and secluded. The areas for the best vistas and views are Franconia Notch, Crawford Notch, Pinkham Notch, and the Kancamagus Scenic Highway. You can start anywhere in this loop, but assuming you're coming from Boston up I-95, the charming towns of Lincoln and North Woodstock is a natural starting point. We'll cover day 1 of the road trip, starting out in Lincoln and North Woodstock and covering where to stay, what to do, what the best hikes are by skill level, and where to eat. Lincoln and North Woodstock are picturesque villages that act as a gateway to the White Mountains and make for a great base of operation exploring Franconia Notch and Kancamagus Highway. Franconia Notch is one of the most scenic areas in the entire Northeast, maybe the entire eastern U.S. Flanked by Kinsman Ridge and Mount Cannon on one side, and the iconic Franconia Ridge and Mount Lafayette on the other. Let's take a look at accommodations in the Lincoln Woodstock area. This is meant to be more of a jumping off point. You might find prices higher or lower depending on when you end up booking. I am using Google as a guide here, but feel free to use your booking platform of choice. On the higher end, you have a lot of great local resorts, including ones attached to the nearby Loon Mountain Ski Resort. This includes Riverwalk Resort, which starts at $352 a night. Up I-93, you also have Woodward's with rooms starting at $505 and Indian Head. For national chains, there's the Hampton Inn starting at $405 a night and Holiday Inn at $385 right in downtown Lincoln. For charming local inns, you might want to look at Woodstock Inn and Brewery, which I can personally recommend, and the Wilderness Inn Bread and Breakfast. There's not much in way of affordable accommodations. You have some motels which are almost as expensive as hotels. Looks like you're really not going to avoid spending at least $200 a night, probably more like $250. There's also the Notch Hostel, which is by far the cheapest option if you don't mind bunk-style accommodations in a shared space. This is a popular spot for Appalachian Trail thru hikers, though you probably won't encounter many of them this time of year. For camping, you have the Hancock Campground along the Conch and Lafayette Place in the heart of Franconia Notch. Just make sure your sleep system is rated for 4 seasons in case it drops below freezing. Right in Lincoln, you have the White Mountains Visitor Center, a good place to start your journey and learn more about what to do in the region. Additionally, you have the Flume Gorge Visitor Center and Franconia Notch State Park, which also has a small cafeteria. Here you can pay $21 to explore the breathtaking Flume Gorge, a short 2-mile loop hike through an absolutely stunning rock gorge featuring waterfalls, caves, a covered bridge, and pretty fall colors. The hike is friendly to almost all fitness levels. At Cannon Mountain Ski Resort, you can pay $28 to take the aerial tramway up to the top of the 4,080-foot summit with 360 views of Franconia Notch, Mount Lafayette, and Franconia Ridge, and all the way to New York on a clear day. If you want one of the most iconic views of fall foliage in the entire White Mountains, Artist Bluff is a must. The trail is only 1.5 miles long, which is 436 feet of elevation gain, but the trail can get pretty rugged. Another great hike in Franconia State Park is the 3-mile round-trip hike to Lonesome Lake. The lake provides a stunning mirror to the surrounding mountains and trees laden with pretty leaves. At the far end is also one of the AMC's wilderness huts, bookable for overnight stays, bunk style, when in season. While the trail is pretty straightforward, there is 1,030 feet of elevation gain. If you're looking for something more difficult, look no further than Mount Lafayette. This is one of the best hikes in the eastern US and is a highlight on many Appalachian Trail journeys. This 8.6-mile loop with 3,832 feet of elevation gain takes you over 3 peaks including Mount Lincoln, Little Haystack, and Mount Lafayette itself. With over a mile of hiking trail in the alpine zone above the tree line, you'll be transported to a completely different world with stunning 360-degree views. If you ever wanted to live out your Lord of the Rings fantasies, this is the hike you want to do. However, only attempt this hike if you have the proper gear and have checked the weather forecast. People have died up here on the ridgeline underestimating conditions and not being properly equipped. There's no shame in turning back. I've hiked this mountain 3 times now, each time more memorable than the last. Alternatively, Mount Musalaki also offers stunning views above treeline. There's 2 main trails up the mountain, one easier than the other. The George Brook Loop is 6.9 miles with 2,444 feet of elevation gain, overall pretty gradual and easy. If you want more of a challenge, the Beaver Brook Trail is 7.9 miles with 3,185 feet of elevation gain and is considered one of the toughest stretches along the Appalachian Trail. The trail follows the Beaver Brook up the mountain at a steep grade, offering views of gorgeous waterfalls and cascades for most of the way up, and also features wood steps drilled into the rock. Just don't attempt this hike in wet conditions. There's lots of places to choose from in both Lincoln and North Woodstock. Some of my favorite restaurants include Woodstock Inn and Brewery, Angry Hog Barbecue, and Gypsy Cafe. There's also a Price Chopper in Lincoln for groceries. Littleton is one of the most picturesque towns in the White Mountains, famous for its covered bridge and old mill. Meanwhile, Crawford Notch is one of the most iconic places in the White Mountains, offering some of the best views around. Home to Mount Washington and the Cog Railroad, there's a plethora of hiking options as well. The most famous resort is Bretton Woods and the Omni Washington Hotel. The hotel hosted world leaders at the Bretton Woods Conference in 1944, establishing the World Bank, International Monetary Fund, and essentially guiding international development following World War II. You can stay here for $750 a night or at the nearby inn for $387. Also of note is the Appalachian Mountain Club's Highland Center at Crawford Notch, reminiscent of a lodge you might find in a national park right on the Appalachian Trail. Rates will vary, but for as low as $136, you can rent a bunk in a shared room or a private room with a shared bathroom for as low as $191 per night. This is a great option if you're planning to do a lot of hikes like Mount Willard or Mount Jackson in the area, or are the adventurous type. Breakfast is included as a bonus. Even if you're not staying here, there is a gift shop, bathrooms, and more info about local hikes to check out. There's not many chain hotels in this area. The best you have is Best Western with rooms going for $282 per night. For cozy inns, you have a lot of options, including Mulburn Inn at $300 per night, Thayer's Inn at $173 per night, and the Chandler at $302. When it comes to affordable budget options, you're already in better shape than down in Lincoln, but still expect to spend at least $150 per night. There's the Four Seasons Motor Inn at $169 per night, and Profile Deluxe Motel at $199 per night. For camping, there's a Campsite of America just outside of Littleton and Sugarloaf Campgrounds. To the north, you have Santa's Village Theme Park, the perfect stop if you have little kids in tow. Crawford Notch is a hub for a lot of activity in the White Mountains. It's home to the AMC Highland Center, where many trails begin, as well as where the Appalachian Trail passes through the area. Just off the road, driving through the Notch, you'll have the Silver and Flume Cascade waterfalls. Hard to miss. Just pull over. In addition, this is where the Mount Washington Cog Railroad is located. For $91, you can take the oldest cog railroad up to the very top of Mount Washington, the tallest peak in the Northeast at over 6,800 feet. At the top, there's a visitor center, cafeteria, museum, and platforms to see some of the best views in the White Mountains. Mount Washington is known for having the worst weather in the world, including the fastest wind speed captured on Earth. Expect temperatures be 30 to 50 degrees colder at the peak than at the base of the mountain. From the Highland Center, you can hike to the top of Mount Willard, giving you one of the most iconic views in the White Mountains. The total length is 3.1 miles with 895 feet of elevation gain. The trail is very gradual and doesn't require any technical hiking. Get here early if you want to beat the crowds who hike this mountain every fall. Ripley Falls is an easy 1 mile hike with 308 feet of elevation gain, leading to a spectacular 100-foot tall waterfall. If you want an even more impressive waterfall, Arethusa Falls is the tallest waterfall in New Hampshire at 160 feet. The trail is 2.8 miles long with an elevation gain of 885 feet. There's so many great moderately difficult mountains over 4,000 feet in this area. Mount Jackson offers stunning views with a steep ascent out of Crawford Notch. The trail is 4.7 miles long with an elevation gain of 2,178 feet. Likewise, nearby Mount Pierce also offers spectacular views of the Presidential Range, Crawford Notch, and beyond. The trail is 5.9 miles with 2,398 feet of elevation gain. Why take the train up when you can hike Mount Washington instead? This extremely popular hike also starts at the Cog Railroad parking lot. The Ammonoosuc Trail is 8.2 miles round trip along the gorgeous Ammonoosuc Creek as you pass by several iconic waterfalls until you arrive at the Lake of the Clouds Hut above tree level. From there, it's a straight shot up to the peak, hiking a trail entirely consisting of boulders with a commanding view your entire way up. You can easily add on Mount Monroe, a quick 20-minute detour with a great view of Mount Washington. Once again, Mount Washington is a beast of its own. Double-check weather reports and ensure you're properly equipped with warm weather clothing, water, food, and other essentials. Above treeline is very exposed with limited protection from the elements. Don't be a hero if conditions are too treacherous to continue. Even in summer, the peak is regularly below freezing, and by October, it's possible for the peak to be blanketed in snow already, which means you'll probably need microspikes at the very least, but only if you're comfortable hiking in wintry conditions. I've hiked Mount Washington twice and waited for near perfect weather windows to hike the mountain. All my favorite places to eat in this area are close to Littleton, including Schilling Brewing Company, Topic of the Town, and Iron Furnace Brewing in Franconia. For groceries, you have the Littleton Food Co-op and a Shaw's grocery store. If you have an extra day to spend in the White Mountains, you'll want to spend it in Gorham and Pinkham Notch. Gorham isn't as large as the other towns being mentioned, but it's directly on the Appalachian Trail, and Pinkham Notch also offers some spectacular hiking. The AMC also runs Joe Dodge Lodge in Pinkham Notch right along the Appalachian Trail. Like the lodge in Crawford Notch on the other side of the Presidentials, there's bunks and rooms for rent with breakfast included. Great if you're planning on doing some of the area hikes, including Mount Washington, Mount Madison, or the Wildcats. $50 per night will get you bunked in a shared room, and for $160 a night, you can rent a bunk room that sleeps four. For $150 per night, you can rent a private room with a shared bathroom and showers. For higher-end accommodations, you have Glen House with rooms going for $420 a night. For cozy inns, you have the Mount Washington B&B and Top Notch Inn, which has rooms for $309 per night up in Gorham. Down in Jackson, you have the Christmas Farm Inn with rooms for $422 per night and Windy Hill Bed and Breakfast. For affordable budget options, there's the Northern Peaks Motor Inn with rooms starting at $174 per night and Roadway Inn with rooms starting at $214. Though it might be worth spending a little bit extra more to stay somewhere a little bit nicer. For camping, there's the Dolly Cop Campground and Green Meadows. If taking the train or hiking up Mount Washington didn't sound appealing, you can also drive up. That's right, you can drive up to one of the tallest peaks in the eastern US. This costs $45 per car and driver, plus $20 for every adult passenger, with discounts for kids and seniors. Not for the faint of heart, since there are sections with steep drop-offs. At the end of the day, you can slap on your My Car Hike Mount Washington sticker on your bumper and stick it to all the hikers who just came up the hard way. Alternatively, you can take a guided tour up to the top if the thought of driving makes you queasy. Tours last 2 hours and cost $57 per adult. You'll also find Pinkham Notch Visitor Center where a lot of trailheads start for various hikes. Starting at the Pinkham Notch Visitor Center, the hike is 0.7 miles round trip with 160 feet of elevation gain, ending at a gorgeous 90-foot waterfall. In addition, you have the Glen Ellis Falls just to the south. This 0.4 mile trail has 88 feet of elevation gain and leads to a gorgeous 60-foot waterfall. You can also tack on the Lost Pond Trail if starting from Pinkham Notch Visitor Center, adding 1.6 miles to the hike. Hiking the Wildcats will give you one of the best views of Mount Washington and the Presidentials. The trail to Wildcat D is 4.7 miles round trip with just over 3,000 feet of elevation gain. Be warned though, that the trail is the steepest part of the Appalachian Trail, climbing an exhausting 3,000 feet in just 2 miles. Alternatively, you can just hike up one of the ski trails. For a longer trip, you can hike all the way to Wildcat A for a spectacular view of Carter Notch, which weighs in at 8.2 miles round trip and 795 feet of elevation gain. If Wildcat sounds too extreme for you, consider hiking the Imp Face instead. The 6-mile loop features 2,070 feet of elevation gain, giving you many of the same views as Wildcat. Glen Boulder is a special resident of Pinkham Notch. It's a massive rock precariously leaning over the edge, just above tree line, keeping a watch over the notch. The trail is 5.7 miles round trip with an ass-kicking 3,185 feet of elevation gain. This is a great way to get a taste of the otherworldly alpine zone without hiking all the way up to Mount Washington, while offering an unforgettable view of the Notch and Wildcats. Pinkham Notch also offers several trails to hike Mount Washington. The iconic Tuckerman's Ravine Trail is 7.9 miles round trip with 4,242 feet of elevation gain. It will be more difficult than the Amanuensis Trail on the Crawford Notch side of the mountain. Once again, this is not a hike you want to do in inclement weather, and there's no shame in turning back if the weather gets dicey, or if you find yourself way over your head. Mount Washington is the most deadly mountain in the world, not necessarily because the hike is difficult, but because so many people underestimate conditions while hiking. Be prepared and stay safe. The other high peaks also offer spectacular views with long stretches above treeline. Mount Madison is 7.7 miles with 4,077 feet of elevation gain. Meanwhile, Mount Adams clocks in at 7.8 miles with 4,442 feet of elevation gain. If you're a real glutton for punishment, some hardcore hikers even attempt the 18.5-mile Presidential Traverse, hiking 8 of New Hampshire's highest peaks in a single day, featuring 8,238 feet of elevation gain and passing by 3 of the AMC backcountry huts. I have the least experience dining in this area, but I can recommend Big Day Brewing Company, White Mountain Cafe, and The Vault, all in Gorham. Not much in the way for groceries except for Scroggins General Store in Gorham and a Walmart up near Berlin. With a charming walkable Main Street and close to attractions like the Conway Scenic Railroad and Storyland, there's a reason why everyone loves North Conway. It's also the town where you'll find a Walmart, REI, and LL Bean if you need supplies. The local grocers and outfitters in the other mentioned towns do a great job too. Here we'll complete the loop, traveling to North Conway and along the iconic Kancamagus Highway back to Lincoln. Often cited as one of the best fall drives in the nation. Lots of options for accommodations near North Conway. For higher-end resorts, you have White Mountain Hotel and Resort with rooms starting at $569 per night. Also, lots of chains in this area, including Home2 Suites at $363 a night, Holiday Inn with rooms going for $330, and Quality Inn at $275. For cozy local inns, there's the North Conway Mountain Inn with rooms going for $235 a night, Cranmore Mountain Lodge at $325, and Merrill Farm Inn at $299. There's also a lot more affordable accommodations compared to the other regions we looked at, with motels like Briarcliff at $199 per night, White Trellis at a cool $129 per night, and the Yankee Clipper Motor Inn at $197 per night. Lots of great spots for camping along the Conch, especially if you're looking for a quiet area close to the wilderness, including Blackberry Crossing Campground, Jugger Johnson Campground, and Passage Conway Campground. Right downtown, you can hop on the Conway Scenic Railroad, taking you through the backcountry of the White Mountains. Tickets start at $24 for an hour trip and up to $80 for an 8-hour all-day excursion. Also great for kids is Storyline Amusement Park, featuring rides, attractions, and shows, letting your imagination run wild. Admission is $40. In town, you have the beautiful Moat Mountain overlook and lots more to discover along the 34.5-mile backcountry drive along the scenic Kancamagus Highway, ranked as one of the best scenic drives in the United States. This includes the iconic Hancock Overlook you see in so many photos. Just note, this route is notorious for getting backed up on the weekends during leaf peeping season. It is common for tourists to stop in the middle of the road to take pictures and queue up for crowded viewpoints. I highly recommend doing the drive early in the day to beat the crowds, or save it for a weekday. Diana Bass is an easy hike that has 1.1 miles round trip with 62 feet of elevation gain to one of the top swimming holes in the White Mountains. While it probably won't be warm enough for swimming, it makes for a great fall hike. Along the Kancamagus Highway are numerous great short hikes. One such hike is a 0.7 miles round trip to Sabaday Falls with 101 feet of elevation gain. This path is extra wide and flat, great for strollers and those with mobility issues. Lincoln Woods is an extremely popular area for several mountains, but it's also great for taking in the fall colors next to the beautiful Pinkham River. Featuring a wide smooth trail that goes on for several miles, leading to sites such as Franconia Falls or Black Pond. This is also the starting/end point for the famed Pimi Loop, named one of the most scenic and most difficult backpacking loops in the nation, with 31.2 miles in distance and nearly 10,000 feet in elevation gain. Lots of great moderate hikes in the area. Mount Hedgehog is a 4.8-mile loop off the Conch with 1,400 feet of elevation gain, offering spectacular views. Iron Mountain is a fun 4.4-mile hike where the trailhead is at the top of a dirt road. This is one of the few hikes where the view at the trailhead is just as nice as at the peak. Table Mountain off of Bear Notch Road also has you starting out already at elevation. The hike is 3.7 miles round trip with 1,394 feet of elevation gain. Mount Osceola is 7.6 miles round trip with 2,040 feet of elevation gain. In between East Osceola and the main peak is a rock climbing feature called the Chimney. While you don't need rock climbing gear for this hike, you're pretty much going straight up the mountain for a good 20 feet, so not for those afraid of heights or exposure. At the peak, there's a magnificent cliff edge offering a spectacular view of the White Mountains. Mount Chikura is an extremely unique hike. If you're into rock scrambling with some exposure and steep drop-offs, you're going to have a lot of fun. Climbing up the bald summit has been probably one of my most memorable experiences in the White Mountains. This is a 10-mile loop with 3,061 feet of elevation gain. North Conway offers a ton of options when it comes to dining out. My favorite includes Moat Mountain, Muddy Moose, and Metropolitan Coffee House. If you have some extra time, Fairgrounds is a fun coffee shop in an old bank just a short drive to Fryeburg, Maine. Of course, you also have to visit Zeb's Variety Store. It's a must. And our loop is complete. Hopefully you got some ideas for your upcoming trip to the White Mountains in the stunning fall. If you have any questions or recommendations, please post them below. There's a reason why people fall in love with the nature of New England, and the fall vibes is a top reason. If you found my guide useful, please like and subscribe. It would help me out considerably. Live free or die? More like live free and look at dead pretty leaves.